If you were hired as a security guard at a pizzeria and discovered that the place holds a terrifying secret, along with animatronics determined to eliminate you, what would you do? In this video, we will analyze the mistakes made and discuss the best decisions to survive the animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's. At Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a once popular family fun spot now empty, we see a night guard trying to escape from something seemingly very menacing. However, he is caught and subjected to a torture device that harms him and likely finishes him off. A few days later, we meet Mike Schmidt, a mall security guard who lost his job due to a misunderstanding. He got into trouble when he attacked a man, mistakenly thinking he was a child kidnapper, when he wasn't. Mike's issue is that he witnessed his brother Garrett being kidnapped as a child, leaving him with deep trauma he hasn't overcome. However, this doesn't give him the right to attack anyone he suspects of being a kidnapper, and he certainly shouldn't have acted impulsively without carefully assessing the situation first, since child abduction usually has clear signs. One of them is that if the child were in danger, they would likely cry for help, but since the boy seemed calm, there was no reason to worry. The best thing to do in this case would have been to approach the child and ask if everything was okay. If the boy expressed that he wasn't okay, Mike would have taken steps to resolve the situation and wouldn't have lost his job. Something that frequently happens to Mike, as his career advisor Steve pointed out, is that his resume is terrible, having been fired from all his jobs within a few days of work. But upon discovering the young man's last name, Steve offers him a job as a night guard at a pizzeria, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But Mike remembers his younger sister Abby, and for that reason, he decides not to accept the night job as he doesn't want to leave her alone. Well, Mike should have noticed the change in Steve's attitude after learning his last name. Furthermore, Steve had stated that there were no job openings for someone with a resume like Mike's and suddenly started offering him this opportunity, indicating that he might be desperate to fill the position or planning something. Therefore, there was a possibility that the job could be risky, especially considering it was a nighttime security job, when malicious people tend to act. The next day, Mike meets with his Aunt Jane and Abby's psychiatrist to discuss the child's custody. Jane argues that Mike is not capable of taking care of the girl, but Mike reveals that Jane is only interested in the money the state pays for the girl. Despite acknowledging some valid points in favor of Jane, Mike doesn't want to give up custody. The doctor suggests to Mike that he should find a job to delay the legal process and keep Abby living with him, since deep down, the girl loves being with her brother. Thinking of his sister's well-being, Mike accepts the job as a night security guard after talking to Steve, who explains that the job involves protecting the pizzeria, which closed in the 80s, but the owner doesn't want to sell it. The place is often invaded by troublemakers, and Mike's task is to keep people away. However, he needs to be careful as the electrical system and monitoring equipment are old and may fail. On his first night on the job, Mike finds a tape and plays it, discovering that it's an old training video for security guards. The video explained that the place was intended for families and children, where creatures called animatronics were the show's highlight. They were advanced robots for the time, created by an unknown robotics expert, and security guards were responsible for keeping the robots and the place safe. At the end of the video, Mike falls asleep and has disturbing dreams about his brother's abduction, encountering children who witnessed the crime, but they run away when he approaches. Mike has had the same dream for over 10 years, but it only began to change after spending a night in the pizzeria, leading us to believe that something supernatural is present in that place and is trying to communicate directly with Mike. Therefore, the best decision for Mike would be to investigate what happened in the pizzeria that led to its closure. There may be something dangerous inside or a terrible event that occurred and drove away customers. Another factor that stands out is the fact that Mike is uninformed about the events in his own city. Several security guards have disappeared in the pizzeria in recent years, putting Mike in a situation of imminent danger. Meanwhile, Jane hires a group to vandalize the pizzeria and force Mike's dismissal because without a job, he would lose custody of Abby. On the second night, Mike, being a good security guard, eventually falls asleep and has the same dream again. This time, he manages to follow a boy but is surprised by an attack and wakes up in a panic, with everything failing. If we look closely, one of the animatronics was watching him. However, Mike didn't notice and only heard the doorbell ring. Officer Vanessa introduces herself, asking if he's the new security guard. Upon noticing that Mike was injured, she kindly offers to help treat his wounds, somehow displaying knowledge of where to find first aid supplies. But Mike was still confused, trying to understand how the boy from his dream had managed to harm him in real life. While helping him, Vanessa tells him about the pizzeria, which closed in the 80s due to the disappearance of 5 children, the same ones that appear in Mike's dream. The officer says she used to love going to the pizzeria before it closed. She decides to show him the place properly, turning on all the lights and machines, displaying the animatronics in full operation, at least until a malfunction occurs due to lack of maintenance. Actually, if you paid attention, the children who appear in Mike's dreams are clearly representations of the robots. The boy in the top hat corresponds to Freddy, the boy with rabbit ears is Bonnie, the little girl in yellow represents Chica, and the little one with a hook is Foxy. The similarities are evident, and it's surprising that Mike hasn't realized this yet. At dawn, Mike and Vanessa leave without noticing the presence of Jeff, who was hired by Jane to vandalize the place. Well, this just proves that Mike is a terrible security guard, as he has cameras around the pizzeria and didn't notice that Jeff was planning something. Upon realizing that Mike had left, Jeff gathers his sister and friends to vandalize the place. They manage to break into the pizzeria without difficulty. Shortly after, Jeff instructs his friends to steal valuable items and cause as much damage as possible in a short time. However, the restaurant's animatronics come to life and easily eliminate the group. Well, this invasion plan was one of the silliest I've seen. Jeff knew that Mike was the security guard, making it obvious that there were surveillance cameras installed for better security. But they all entered without wearing masks, making them easily identifiable in the surveillance recordings in case the police were to check the cameras. The most alarming situation is that Max, Jeff's sister, was also captured by the robots, and Max used to be Abby's babysitter. Her disappearance forces Mike to take Abby to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, he instructs the girl to never leave the surveillance room, telling her to stay there to sleep. After setting up a small tent to make the environment more comfortable for Abby, Mike decides to conduct a thorough inspection of the place for the first time and cleans up all the damage caused by Jeff and his accomplices during the day. Surprisingly, he doesn't find any of the bodies. But when the clock strikes 4 in the morning, fatigue overcomes Mike, and he finally falls asleep. While Mike naps, his sister Abby hears a child's voice calling for her. Intrigued, she approaches the animatronics but finds only Freddy. In my opinion, it was already a mistake to bring the child to the pizzeria, but Mike could have at least locked the surveillance room, considering that he likely has access to all the keys in the place, which would have prevented the girl from leaving without supervision. Mike has another dream. He encounters one of the children from the dream and asks for help to find out who kidnapped his brother. The child asks what Mike is willing to give in return, and he makes the mistake of saying he would give anything. However, the child disappears, leaving only a drawing of a rabbit on the floor. Okay, making a deal with a spirit can have irreversible consequences, and it would have been wiser to ask what the children wanted first, since the agreement could involve an offering or even his life. Mike is awakened by his sister's screams and rushes to her aid, only to find her surrounded by animatronics. Surprisingly, the creatures turn out to be friendly and were simply tickling the girl. Realizing that the situation was not a joke and that no one was controlling the robots, Mike panics and decides to take his sister away as quickly as possible. However, that night he returns to the pizzeria with Abby, which doesn't make sense. But Vanessa was already there, observing the drawings and reminiscing about her childhood when they used to sing about their love for the yellow rabbit. Meanwhile, Abby has fun with her new friends, and what raises suspicions is that Vanessa already had knowledge about the robots since she didn't show surprise in the face of the entire situation. At this point, Abby accidentally injures herself while playing with the animatronics, prompting Vanessa to warn Mike not to bring Abby back to the pizzeria. Mike then leaves Abby in Jane's care and returns to the pizzeria during the day. There, he takes several sleeping pills in an attempt to uncover the identity of his brother's kidnapper in his dreams. However, this time the dream is different, and the children propose that he keeps Garrett forever in exchange for Abby. Initially, Mike accepts the offer but changes his mind, leading to an attack by the children. He later wakes up tied to the same torture device that had finished off the first security guard. Desperate, he escapes from the device by removing the pins that his predecessor had loosened. He finds the bodies of the group that invaded the pizzeria and tries to flee but ends up seriously injured by Foxy. It's really surprising that Mike hasn't found these bodies and alerted the police. Considering their condition, their odor should have been noticeable from afar. Furthermore, it's hard to believe that no one is investigating the disappearance of these young people. Meanwhile, Vanessa finds Mike and provides first aid for his injuries. When Mike shares his dream with Vanessa, she reveals that she is the daughter of William Afton, the serial killer responsible for the children's disappearances, who concealed their bodies in the animatronics. She also mentions that the robots are possessed by the spirits of the missing children, led by a young blonde boy who frequently mentions a yellow rabbit. Vanessa gives Mike a photo of a man dressed as the yellow rabbit, identifying him as her father. Upon closer inspection, it is possible to notice the toy in Vanessa's hands, the same one that Mike's brother was playing with when he was kidnapped. This confirms that the yellow rabbit may be Garrett's kidnapper. In the meantime, the animatronic Freddy, possessed by the blonde boy, finishes off Jane and takes Abby back to the pizzeria in a taxi, which surprisingly carries them. Vanessa reveals that the animatronics plan to turn Abby into one of them and gives Mike tools to defend himself, explaining that electrical shocks can temporarily incapacitate them. Mike suggests that the police officer accompany him, but Vanessa refuses, saying it would be useless if her father were present. However, she gives Mike tips on how he could enter without being noticed during the mechanical holidays. Okay, the obvious question is why Vanessa didn't share this information with Mike or her fellow police officers earlier, considering her father was a serial killer who hid bodies inside robots. Forget that, because Mike manages to enter the pizzeria unnoticed, and after throwing water on the stage, he uses a shock weapon to deactivate Freddy and Bonnie. With that, Mike prevents Chica from putting the girl inside a robot, but while the two try to escape, Mike is attacked by Mr. Cupcake and asks his sister to hide. However, Foxy finds the girl, who is saved at the last moment by Vanessa. Well, with the animatronics temporarily disabled, the most sensible option would be to find a way to destroy these creatures, whether by removing their limbs with an axe or even starting a fire to eliminate them. However, they take too long, and the famous rabbit appears, where we find out that it was Steve, the advisor, who reveals himself as William, after leaving Mike unconscious with a beating. Vanessa tries to help Mike by shooting the rabbit, but it has no effect, and she is attacked by Steve. However, Abby tries to help, and as the girl was friends with the missing children, she quickly draws a picture to describe that the yellow rabbit was evil. This releases the animatronics from the serial killer's influence, and they turn against him. Mr. Cupcake damages the rabbit's costume, activating internal mechanisms that fatally harm him. While the animatronics take Steve into the darkness, Mike and Abby take care of Vanessa, who was seriously injured and fell into a coma. Days pass, and Mike is still taking care of Abby, trying to return to his normal routine after the disturbing events. And what would you do to survive the animatronics? Tell me in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. And remember, be careful when accepting any night job, because the night hides dark secrets.